Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Quilty, CEO of the New South Wales Council of Social Service. And this afternoon, I'm really pleased to be joined by Jeffrey Hawkins, who's running as an independent for the seat of Bega in the upcoming state by-election. So thanks, Jeffrey, very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We've got some standard questions and we'll just get straight into it if that is okay with you. Housing costs, like is happening in so many parts of New South Wales, are skyrocketing in the electorate of Bega. Homelessness is on the rise. Our homeless services can't meet demand and there's simply not enough social housing. What are your plans to address what is a pretty dire situation?
Sorry, I've just jotted a few notes, so just bear with me. Housing and homelessness, been there, done that. Obviously, in the written correspondence I sent to you, a big thank you to Link to Home and the ladies from Mission Australia to help put a roof over myself and my family's head when it was needed. It was great effort from them, but obviously when the time comes up for the end of transitional housing lease, that's the only reason I really moved house, because I couldn't find affordable housing in Bega. The services work, but we just need more of it. And to do that, we need not only obviously a roof over people's heads, but a purpose. One of the things I currently work with community groups is developing what's called eco-technology and micro communities. And that program that we're working with, at the moment, it looks like that in theory, it looks like it will actually cover just about everything that we need. Basically, it's building smaller communities with tiny homes, which people can live in, having their own gardens to support their community with food, and we're currently looking at potential environmental or organic crops as an income source. So that would sort of address everything that we're looking at as a community, but I'm still trying to get enough information as to how wide or how broadly we need to expand that program to provide proof of concept that it works and that it will address the problems. And that's done without any form of support from government. That's just working with the community. So I guess stepping up and working out where the money goes. It looks like we could possibly look at financing something like that to bring it to life. So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep the answers quick.
No, and bringing lived experience is always a good starting point, isn't it? You've touched on this. It's not just about putting a roof over people's head, and I think we've seen during COVID that the social services sector has really stepped it up to keep the most vulnerable in the community safe and supported. But as you've also referred to, it's absolutely stretched to capacity. There are real problems with recruiting and retaining staff because of poor pay and conditions in the non-government sector. So how will you champion the work of the sector, including that of local First Nations organisations, and ensure that the sector gets the resources and the recognition that it requires?
Well, I think the first thing is to find out, obviously, where the money goes. I've pardon the expression, but I've long held the belief that the money's not getting to where it needs to go. And I think accountability from government is going to be one of the first things to address that. Look, as far as First Nations people and everything, I'm colourblind. But what I do believe is that we do have a community of all different sorts of people, and whether they're First Nations, whether they're immigrants, whether they're born and bred here, whatever it might be, I think we all have something to offer. And if we can all offer what we have on the table, I'm only one person, but I've got 70,000 brains out there that I think between them that can really make a difference. So I think it's got to be a community effort. Knowing what we need and putting the money where it's needed accordingly.
The data tells us that it's women that continue to suffer the greatest impacts from COVID, including increased caring responsibilities, greater job loss and impacts from things like rising domestic violence. What will you advocate for to better support women and children in the electorate and to address rising domestic violence?
I think part of that is going to be what are the underlying causes? I mean, obviously, at the moment, with everything that's going on, is I think finances is probably the biggest one. If you don't have the money, you get stressed, and if you get stressed, unfortunately, at some point, everyone has a breaking point and they lash out. If we can reopen the businesses, and that takes the financial burden off, not just women, but takes the financial burden off families. And if families have a purpose, or they have a sense of well-being, that obviously, I mean, kids pick up everything. But if you've got stresses, and if you've got all these anxieties, that's what the kids are going to pick up. But if you've got a purpose, and if you've got a steady income again, the kids are going to feel safer. I mean, get them back out into playing sports and such again too. Reconnect with their community, reconnect with their peers, and also too having a community that supports each other. Obviously, I mean, one of the reasons I had to pass up a media interview was because I was actually minding someone's kids, and that's the basic things that we can do to help each other.
So turning to children and young people, there's a surprisingly large number of children growing up in the Bega electorate in poverty. We know that this places them at greater risk of abuse, neglect, and poorer educational outcomes. What would your policies be to support parents and promote children's wellbeing?
Sorry, I have to be very quick here. I'm not a politician. I'm from project management, so my perspective is I always have to look at these things as end results. Okay, because of that, I can't promise everything, but I have, from my background, I have to reach out to everyone who can contribute. Look, it'd be nice to just make a promise and hope it all comes true. But at the end of the day, this is why I work with the community groups I do. And that is specifically so we can look for end results. Poor education. I mean, I don't know why TAFE was separated from secondary schools. I mean, where are the kids in schools supposed to get their practical experience to get them out into the workforce? And you get them, they get that practical experience. They get out into the workforce with the confidence that they can, if not do the job, but at least they know how the job works. And I mean, these are all, it almost seems like these are all placed as individual issues, but they're not. They're all part of a collective issue, and we need to address basically all of them at once. So I'm just trying to explain as best I can.
It is absolutely all integrated and linked. I want to turn now to emergency responses and disaster management. The research tells us that top-down emergency responses can suffer from lack of local knowledge, either too much too soon before the community's ready for it, or it's too little and it's too late. What do you think are the key issues in developing disaster preparedness and emergency response systems that actually work on the ground?
Look, any kind of support services, whether it's health, whether it's disaster emergencies, any of those sort of things, these are issues that should be addressed on an as-need basis. I mean, there's no point, and please, for whoever the other candidates are, please forgive me for this, but there's no point committing tens of millions of dollars to an emergency response centre in Coomera when what we should be doing is every 3 months or every 6 months looking around and seeing what's needed. Get a new RFS truck into here where it's needed. Fix a roadway here where it's needed on the spot at the time. I mean, look, I've put the question out publicly. I mean, Kirsty McBain, I think, was the federal member who says we've spent $95 million in bushfire relief. But again, where did the money go? There was a lady that independently raised support, $50-odd million for bushfire relief and disaster relief. The Supreme Court's actually ruled that that's got to go to a specific charity, and the money is to be used for training and administration. I mean, a lot of what I've seen lately, particularly in the last couple of weeks, to me, from my background and my perspective, it just beggars belief. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I mean, just before I did this whole, becoming a candidate, I mean, I was still out on my mate's farm helping him strip timbers that's regrown enough to him to use to chop them down so he can build a house and put a roof over his family's head. And that's where I spend my time. Well, I used to spend my time, but now I've got these commitments. But at the end of the day, I mean, I can help one family or I can help, 70,000 people. And it beggars belief that this stuff hasn't been done already.
So we are seeing more and more disasters, from the current pandemic to floods, bushfires and droughts. And we know that all of these have greater impacts for rural areas, for already disadvantaged groups, and for the health, be it physical or mental, the health of our community. So specifically in relation to health, what do you think needs to happen to ensure that local health systems are robust enough to cope with these occurrences?
That's pretty easy. I heard the announcement at Monday night's forum. The government says we're going to throw hundreds of $1 million to build a big hospital on land that hasn't been purchased, in conflict with another state bypass program. To me, it would make much more sense of getting to the actual nurses and the carers and finding out what they need to do their job safely and effectively. I mean, a building program is going to take lots of years anyway, but why commit all the money up front to one project when you can commit portions of that to sustain increases in the services that we need?
So it's about the people rather than the building.
Well, a building is just a building, but it's the people that will or won't make it work. And I mean, we've got plenty of services here that need people, but at the same time too, you can't expect them to walk into it unless they feel safe. I mean, it's like any business or any workforce. If you don't feel safe, then you won't go to work. And if you don't go to work, you can't provide the services that are needed.
So look, that does bring us to the end of the questions. So thank you very much for your time, Jeffrey. We've really appreciated it. We've covered some big issues there, and we wish you all the best in the by-election on the 12th of February. No
worries, thank you. And as you did say before this, I did put everything, answered all the questions as best I could in writing. So by all means, pop that up. And if people have any other questions, I mean, I'm a phone call away. I've learned that. But thank you very much for having me. It's much appreciated.